My name is Jemima, and I have the privilege of bringing the word this morning. Did you guys have a good week? Yes? I had a pretty good week. It ended really, really well because I got to play games with a couple of my friends Friday night. And if you know anything about me, that is a week well spent. I love to play board games, card games, any kind of game because I'm just a little competitive. But also mostly I use it as a way to spend time with the people that I love. And I got to play my favorite board game called the farming game, because if you know me, I'm a big farmer. I love it because it's completely chance-based, and if you win, you feel like a champion, because I currently feel like a champion, because I kind of destroyed them so epically. And I can say that because one of them, Zach Henry, is here, and he's sitting there like, you didn't destroy me, I got second place, it wasn't that much. But, he agrees. Anyway, so I love to play games. I grew up in a family that plays games a lot. We played a lot of cards. Our favorite board game or group game we played when I was young was called Balderdash. Yes, some Balderdash fans, awesome. I wasn't allowed to play when I was really little because the game is that you get a word and you have to write a definition for the word, and the real definition goes into the stack and you try to guess. So people are trying to get you to convince you that their definition is the right definition. But when I was like 6 or 7, I couldn't come up with a very good definition, right? So like, what does a 7-year-old say that a certain word is like the sound of a fart or something like that. It was probably like really embarrassing and terrible. So I wasn't allowed to do that, but my job was to pick up all the papers and give them to the person reading, and then that was my job. But when a couple years ago, I got a new version of Balderdash, now that I'm an adult and I'm allowed to play. And there is a couple different categories with this game, and one of them is the new one has laws. So it will list a law, and then you have to write a definition or like finish that law. So we're going to play this morning. Okay, you ready? On the screen, pretty soon, we're going to have 3 different laws, and you need to guess which is the correct answer, okay? So question number 1. In Lexington, Kentucky, it used to be illegal to carry a frozen ice cream cone in your pocket, your vacuum cleaner to your next door neighbor's house, or a jar of pickle juice on the bus. So think of your answer, think about it. What sounds like something you would have in Lexington, Kentucky? I don't know. And also, I think part of this game is trying to figure out what are the 2 that I wrote to make you believe that it's the real answer. Okay, so you've got your answer in your head? All right, let's see. The answer is a frozen ice cream cone in your pocket. Crazy, so crazy. All right, law number 2. In Massachusetts, the law still states that mourners at a funeral may not snore loudly, take their shoes off, or eat more than 3 sandwiches each. Snore, take your shoes off, or eat a whole lot of sandwiches. All right, got your answer? Let's hear it. Let's see it. It is eat more than 3 sandwiches. Do not try to eat a 4th sandwich in Massachusetts because you will be arrested so fast. All right, and the last one is in Chicago. It is illegal to take a poodle to the opera, more than 3 steps backwards while dancing, or a nap in public. So what do you think you can't do in Chicago? Think about it. All right, let's see the answer. A poodle to the opera. If you have a poodle, you can take it a lot of places, but don't even try to take it to the opera. Actually, all of these, I didn't really officially write any of these. These are all answers to other laws that were there other places, which is all crazy to me. So somewhere you can't take more than 3 steps backwards while dancing. Kind of crazy. Laws are really interesting. They affect a lot of people. Someone can do something, and then now we have a law, and no one can do it. One person can affect a lot of people. And that's what Paul is talking about at the end of chapter 5 in Romans, and we're going to read. Pastor Aaron really did a great job talking about this last week, about what Adam did and how it affects us. So we're just going to continue that in Romans 5, 18 through 21, if you want to pull out your Bibles. All right. It says this: consequently, just as one trespass resulted in condemnation for all people, so also one righteous act resulted in justification and life for all people. For just as through the disobedience of one man, the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of one man, the many were made righteous. The law was brought in so that the trespass might increase. But where sin increased, grace increased all the more, so that just as sin reigned in death, so also grace might reign through righteousness to bring eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. So Adam's disobedience brought in sin, and Jesus' obedience brings in our freedom. When I was reading through this section, I got really hung up on verse 20 because the wording and reminder that in Romans we're reading Paul, who is like a lawyer, and he's all about the law. So sometimes when he writes, I'm just like, whoa, what's going on? So in verse 20, it says, the law was brought in so that the trespass might increase. And that really didn't make sense to me when I was reading. Like, what is that? Like, the law was brought in so that we have more sinning? Like, that doesn't make sense. But what it's saying here is that when we have the law, we then compare what we're doing to God's holy standard. So when the law came in, there was a lot of sin because it was like, hey, look at what you're doing and look at God's holy standard. And I was thinking about this concept, and it's really similar to, here I am talking about another game, but have you guys ever played Telephone Pictionary before? It's also called Telestrations. What you do is you draw a lot of different pictures. You're given these prompts, and sometimes they're crazy. And you have to draw something, like an elephant on a merry-go-round playing a saxophone. Just something like you just have who knows how to draw. So you have to draw them, and then you pass them on. And I am not artistically gifted in that way. I'm not an artist, and so this game is rough for me. I mean, I have a good time, I love it, but who knows what's getting passed along, right? I try my best. And sometimes though, I will draw something, and I look at it, and I think, I'm a savant. Like, surprise. That was really good. And I like it, just, okay, you're gonna, and I always pass it to the next person, you're gonna know exactly what that is, because that was really good. And at the end of the round, everyone gets to look at all the drawings. And every time, as I'm sitting there like, just wait till we get to mine, somebody else's drawing comes up, and it is so much better than mine. And I always stare at it and go, okay, well, if you put ours next to each other, yeah, I am not good at this. Like, I had the joy of sitting next to Aaron Fuller playing this game one time, and Aaron is amazing at everything. We know this about him. And he would draw things, and I was always just so ashamed of my drawings because they were so much better. But it's a similar idea. When you put a picture that's terrible, Jemima's drawing, up against Aaron Fuller's drawing, or someone who is just good at it, it doesn't measure up. And so we had the law come in to say, hey, this is what you're doing, and let's look at what God's holy standard is. And we really just don't measure up because we have all fallen short. And that's what Paul's saying here. We would expect that when it says that sin increased, what would we expect? We would expect punishment. We would expect wrath. We would expect justice. But it says that grace increased all the more. And some translations say grace abounded all the more, which means what? Grace upon grace upon grace. That's what we get. With increased sin, we get increased grace, because that's the Jesus way. I was reading this and thinking about the nature of God and how we serve a God who's really, really gracious. So I want to jump back all the way back to Exodus, which is the second book in the Bible, and read a verse from Exodus 34:6. There's a phrase in it that's so beautiful, talking about the character of God, and it says, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. So early on in the Bible, it's established that this is our God. Our God is gracious. So when you know that, like you read what Paul's saying, it's not that hard to believe that he would increase grace, because this is his character. This is God's character. I love this passage because it comes after something really crazy. This comes after the chapter after the Israelites make this golden calf while Moses is getting the Ten Commandments. And they start worshiping it. And the Lord's reaction to that situation is wrath. He is not happy. and there is a lot of death, and there's a plague, and it is not good. And in the next chapter, Moses goes back to get the 10 Commandments, because as you can imagine, it got smashed in the last story. It says this about God, that he is compassionate, that he is gracious, that he is slow to anger. So I think that that's hard for people to understand. When you're reading through the Bible, you're like, this is a God that is about wrath. Like, there is some really serious stuff. But let's look at the character of God. At his core, this is who he is. So I want to look at some of the Hebrew words in this passage, and a big shout out to the Bible Project who did a word study on this, which was really, really beautiful. So let's look at that. The first Hebrew word is compassionate, which is rahum. Can you say rahum? Hum. And it means compassionate. It is related to the word rehum, which is womb. And what's so cool about that is that rehum and rahum, meaning compassion that comes from your core. It's like compassion that of a woman who has a life in her womb, who gives birth, and her compassion and deep love and emotion towards that child. That's the kind of compassion we're talking about. Rahum. It conveys intense emotion and is described often as deeply moved. And most commonly, this word in the Bible is used to describe God's feeling towards us, that he is deeply moved from deep inside that core, rahum. The next word in this passage is gracious, which is chen. Can you say chen? Yeah, chen. You got to get that phlegmy sound, chen. And that means grace, it means delight, and it means favor. And it's throughout the Old Testament. In Psalms, it's used to describe musicians that have lips of chen, that bring grace and delight in what they're saying. How beautiful is that? In Proverbs 1, it talks about there's a gift given. It talks about an ornament of chen, and that's that it attracts favor. And that's where we get this connection of that grace is a gift given. It's attracting favor. It's a gift given with delight. So when God gives his grace to us, it's with delight. And that's how it connects to this compassion. It's this overwhelming deep move to give us grace because he delights in us. That is our God. That is the God that says, well, sin's going to increase, but I delight in you, so I'm giving you more grace, abounding grace, grace upon grace upon grace. And we, as followers of Jesus, are called to that same compassion, that same grace, when we encounter other people around us. We are called to be deeply moved by the people around us and their pain and their suffering and the emotions that they're experiencing. That's what we're called to have, is grace motivated by delight. Delight in our God and in his creation. So why is it really hard for me to sometimes have grace for people? Why do I struggle sometimes with extending that grace? I don't know, maybe you guys all have it down, but I struggle sometimes with grace. Pastor Aaron talked about last week that he talked about forgiveness. He talked about the passage in Matthew, which we're going to read in a second, about how much we should give forgiveness. And forgiveness is connected right there with grace, right? Is that you're compelled to forgive someone through grace, to extend grace to them. And Jesus had this to say about forgiveness. This is in Matthew 18:21 through 22. Then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Different translations say 70 times 7, some say 77. The number is not really the important part necessarily. It's what the principle that God is teaching here. And I love this passage because Peter is like, it was traditional in Jewish tradition to forgive 3 times. That was very traditional. So he, in his grace, is like, should I forgive 7 times? That's like 4 more than normal. I'm super gracious here. And Jesus is like, well, let me just tell you about abounding grace. Let me tell you about what what God thinks about grace. It's 70 times 7. And he's not giving us a number, so now we have a ledger, right? Because 70 times 7 is what? 490. And I checked it with a calculator earlier because I was so nervous that I was like, it's 490, right? Anyways, it is. I checked it. And so it's not that we have a ledger in front of us, that we keep the person's name and we say, okay, that's the sin and I forgave them. Oh, there was a different sin. That's on a different page. I forgave them. Oh, we're back to that one. We're up to 2 times on this one. We got 490 times we can get to. That's not what this is. It's actually, if you look in 1 Corinthians, right, we hear what love is, and it keeps no record of wrongs. So we have no ledger. There's no keeping record of, I already forgave you for this. It says, forgive, abounding, over and over and over again, because that's how Jesus forgives. We have to remember that we have all fallen short, that we are all sinners, that we all make mistakes, that we're all struggling when we forgive someone over and over and over again. And for me, I have to remember that I am often the problem. It's not always them all the time. I am part of this. If there is a problem in a relationship and we're fighting, I am usually part of the blame. I had a situation a couple of weeks ago at work where I was waiting for, I work during the week at Options Pregnancy Resource Center, and I compile all of the statistics and put them together for our clinic report. And I had put our clinic, I should explain. I don't compile the statistics. They get given to me, and I put them into my report. My report was ready. I was waiting for these stats. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And I'm not getting angry, but I'm just like, when is she going to send them to me? And I'm waiting, and it's like a day or two, and then it's like later in the afternoon, and I really need them. And I'm starting to get a little like tense about it. And then I finally get a message from her saying, hey, when are you, I'm just waiting for you to send that one thing you said, and then I can, and I went, oh, I'm the problem. I was the problem. Here I am going, what is she doing? Why hasn't she sent it? And she's like waiting for me to do what I said I would do that I totally forgot. And that's when I go, oh, okay. I have to give grace because, as my mother says in her wisdom, that you only have to give as much grace as you require. That's all. Actually, that's the amount of grace that you have to give, is just the amount that you require from other people and from the Lord, which is a lot. And for me, it's quite a lot. Only give as much grace as you require. And we have the ability to give grace. We really do. It says in the Bible that the same power that raised Christ from the dead is in us, that when we surrender our life to a relationship with Lord, that he is in us and with us and around us. And God has this intense, huge power, this compassion and grace to give forgiveness and grace. And we can tap into that, right? Like that same power. So we can forgive, we really can, and we have the ability to do so. It's just hard sometimes. In Colossians 4:6, it says, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. And I love that verse because it's like, hey, here's your response to any situation, is let what you do be full of grace. Full of grace, seasoned with salt. As we were singing this morning, I was reflecting on that song, Defender. That line, so much better your way, got me smiling because I thought, in all ways, this is so much better your way, Lord. So much better. My relationships are so much better your way. Everything is so much better your way. This just full of grace. My life is so much better when I am tapping into that compassion and grace for the people around me. Compassion and grace are easy when we see people through God's eyes. When we look at someone with that deep, moved, emotional feeling that God has for us, that we say, oh yeah, that's how I see you. It's a lot easier for me to extend grace when I see people God's way. And to do that, empathy is really essential. Sympathy and empathy are different. Sympathy is saying that I understand your emotions. I understand why you might be upset. That's why we send sympathy cards, to say that like someone passed away in your life, and I can understand that you would be really upset, or you had just a loss, and I understand that, and I'm sending you this card. We don't send empathy cards because empathy is me saying I'm stepping into your emotion. I am living it with you so that I may better completely and wholly understand what you're going through. That's what empathy is. And that is the way of Jesus, is to fully engage and go, I know why you're feeling this way. And empathy is hard for some people, but you don't just get a pass if you're saying, oh, it's really hard for me to empathize. Oh, so you don't have to. No, we have to work on it and surrender to the Lord and say, Lord, please help me understand what this person's going through. Help me see them through your eyes because I'm having a hard time understanding. I have to be really honest and transparent with you. There's been an issue that has been going on, well, really in all of our lives, but I'll just talk about myself for a minute. For the last few months, that I've been having a really hard time tapping into grace and compassion, and that is on the area of wearing masks. As I have now just triggered you all, ride with me to the end on this, that there's just so much emotion, and I feel it like right here in my chest when people start talking about wearing masks. It just, like all of it, it just makes me upset. And I think it's just because one side thinks the other side's stupid, and that side thinks that side's stupid, and if you're in the middle, you think both sides are stupid, and that stresses me out. And I just don't think that's Jesus, any of that. So I had an encounter with someone a few weeks ago on a walk who decided to talk to me about their feeling about masks and mine, and I didn't want that conversation, and that happened, and I left walking away just feeling really upset at this person, and just like, if you feel stuff in your chest, you'll understand. Maybe it's in your stomach. You just kind of feel this unrest, like you're just upset. And I was walking away, and I remember telling myself, like, okay, just don't let this ruin your day. But I was just so frustrated. Don't let this ruin your day. Don't let this. So mad. It's like hostile feeling in my chest. And the Lord pierced me. I mean, he just said, Jemima, that guy is afraid. And I went, I'm so mad. He's afraid. He's afraid. And it was like this, it just melted. I just completely melted. And I just started praying for this guy. Because I was like, whoa, he's afraid. And that's why he started talking to me about this, because he is so afraid. And I just began to pray for him and his life and where he was at. And I was just totally wrecked for him, truly. And then I moved on. I would not have been able to move on had I not seen how he was feeling. And this whole issue with masks, I just feel is a fear thing. I think one side is afraid of the masks, or one side is afraid of the virus and getting it and transmitting it. I think the other side is afraid of freedoms and what it means for wearing masks. And I just think that there's a lot of fear. And if I don't step in and go, why is this person acting this way? Why are they saying that way? Then I can just get upset. But if I say, Lord, show me what's going on in this person. And then I can step in, and I can give truth and love. Absolutely. I can do that. You know, Pastor Aaron talked about that a lot last week. He said, we need to give truth and love. And I can say things, but if I were just to go up to someone and start yelling at them, if I was to go up there and just say, I'm going to give you some truth and love, and here it is, that's not what that is. That's saying, first, I'm going to love you. First, I'm going to step into your world, and I'm going to love you. From this deep compassion I have for the Lord's creation in you, I love you. So if you're yelling at anyone, right away, you're in the wrong. You are, because that's not truth in love. So when you love, you can then give. It's so much easier to say, hey, and give some truth than to yell at them, because we are called to give truth in love. And so I just, I was going back and forth to talk about that, because I was like, masks just gets people upset. And then I thought, you know what? I think we all need some perspective on anything. And it's a good reminder that when you're in a situation that you are getting heated, you are getting upset, that's that like warning signal to you to go, okay, Lord, what is going on? What is going on inside of me? Am I extending grace where I should? Am I loving the way? Where is my compassion? And to stop and to reassess and say, okay, I'm going to step back for a second. I'm going to take some time to pray. Imagine that. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray first before I do anything else. I'm going to invite the worship team up. I want to finish our time with just some praise, some worship time. But I want to encourage you to do a self-assessment. If there is an area in your life where you have failed to extend grace, where you have not loved well, to take a moment and surrender that to Jesus. Say, you got this. This person, this group of people, it could be whatever it is. Lord, I'm sorry that I have failed to extend the grace that I need and they need. Lord, help. Just to bring him into that area. And sometimes it's like, I don't want to. I don't know, for whatever reason, I like to hold on to not liking, to that whole, well, but they hurt me, and then, no. Mm-mm. I get to deal with what's going on inside of me, and I get to extend grace and love, and I get to be slow to anger. I get to keep no record of wrongs. I get to be Jesus' love in a situation that is hard. That's what we're called to do. We are called to live a life of abounding grace, because that is the grace that has been given to us, abounding. So we need to share it with every person that we encounter. Let's pray. God, thank you for your grace that we do not deserve. As our sin has been very evident, you have extended grace upon grace upon grace. God, thank you for the compassion that you feel for your people, the pain that they're feeling, the fear that they're feeling, the whatever's going on. You feel it too with your people. And you give grace. So Lord, in this time, I just pray that we would have the space to humble ourselves, to reconcile areas of our hearts that maybe are not going so well, that little spot on our heart. Lord, I just pray that as we worship, as we sit, as we engage with this, Lord, would you make it really clear if there's someone or someone's that we have not extended grace to? Because I don't want that. I don't want that in my mind, my heart. I don't want that. I want to be full of love and grace, because that is all you have shown to me over and over and over again, is that love and that grace. So God, we just invite you here to have your way. We surrender our hearts to you.